We're pleased to kick off the second hour of the program by being joined by Representative Brenda Carter from Michigan's 29th District, representing the cities of Auburn Hills, Keiko Harbor, Orchard Lake Village, Pontiac, and Sylvan Lake. With us now on the MegaCast. Representative Carter, thanks for being with us again.
Tyler, thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate having you on. So some big things that have been happening in Lansing lately. The budget agreement, of course, came last week between the Republican-led legislature and the Whitmer administration. It seemed to be, from the articles that I read, there seemed to be some optimism behind that from both sides of the aisle, surprisingly enough, despite all the debates that usually go in to this budgetary process. And considering that we're in the second year now of this pandemic, how much more critical is it to get a budget get a budget agreement passed through quickly and not have to go down to the wire like we've seen so many times over the last several years, with the potential for a shutdown due to disagreements on the budget?
Well, Tyler, we are, and I mean this is both sides of the aisle, we are cautiously optimistic that tomorrow we will confirm everything, or no later than Wednesday. A lot of hard work has been done in both chambers, in the House and the Senate, to ensure that we get Michiganders what they need when they need it. So I am very optimistic that we'll conclude everything we need to do with the budget this week.
We're joined by Representative Brenda Carter from Michigan's 29th District with us on the MegaCast. And in terms of getting people what they need, a lot of additional funding, particularly from federal relief aid for COVID-19, has gone toward education. More than there's been a greater emphasis on funding for education over the last year or so than there ever has been before, it seems, at least in my lifetime here in Michigan. But we still have an ongoing problem, and that's particularly with our educators, where particularly student loan rates and low wages for our teachers are forcing a number of them out of the industry altogether. Actually, Detroit News had a really interesting article that with the average starting teacher salary being at $37,549, and nearly half of those teachers, 45%, taking out student loans to fund their education, have an average of debt of about $55,800. It's not that there's a lack of jobs or that there's a lack of opportunity. It's that they're still very underfunded. They're getting a lot of their materials for teaching out of their own pocket. In most cases, that's exactly what they're doing. And on top of that, they're getting paid very low wages that make this industry that's getting tougher and tougher as time goes on less attractive. And here in Michigan, where education's become such an emphasis over the course of the pandemic, there's so much relief aid going toward education. How much of more of a discussion is being had at the state level about how we can better support our teachers so that we attract people into education instead and prevent them from leaving the industry as they have so often during this pandemic?
Well, Tyler, I am pleased to announce that in June, the House Democrats launched an 18-bill package that would address these disparities in our education system. House Bill 5099 would actually eliminate student debt, where my bill that I introduced, House Bill 5100, will, if we're not able to eliminate it, we could at least remove the taxes, the tax burden on the student loans. So there's an 18-bill package. It's very aggressive, and I'm very pleased to announce that this is moving.
And this is a bill that was proposed by Representative Darren Camilleri of Trenton, a Democrat, a former teacher himself. But these kinds of bills that provide this relief and that relieve student debt, they're often met at the opposition of the Republican Party, which is the majority in both chambers of the state Congress at this time. So what has been the response, or how have the discussions been with your Republican counterparts on this? Because on the one hand, they also want to attract teachers to remain in education and people to come into the educational industry to support our kids and support education in the state of Michigan. But relief in this kind, relieving student loan debt, tends to be something that their party in particular is in opposition to.
Well, I can't say that they're in opposition to in its entirety, but what I can say that it is under discussion. We are scheduled to meet when session resumes, and that's going to resume this week. We do have an education meeting tomorrow, and I can bring an update to you where we are with this particular bill package. But I am sure everyone on the education committee, and I'm the Democratic representative for Oakland County, that we're keeping our pulse on this. We know the importance of this. We know the importance of teacher retention. We know the importance of attracting and retaining our young people who are going to college, who want to go into education, but find it too cumbersome and too burdensome to go into education, which in most countries in the world, education is revered. This is the career path most young people want to go in. So what we're looking at is down the road and saying, what can we do on both sides of the aisle that will make sure that we make our education system more viable for our young people?
We're joined by Representative Brenda Carter. She is Michigan's state representative for District 29, which covers the cities of Auburn Hills, Sylvan Lake, Keagle Harbor, Orchard Lake Village, as well as Pontiac as well. And just to follow up with that, 14% of educators with unpaid loan debt have a current balance of $105,000 or higher. So that relief, that student loan relief in some way or another, it would definitely be some very good news to a lot of educators here in the state of Michigan. It'll be interesting to see where that goes in our state Congress. On the broader scale, on the education front, Representative Carter, there's a lot of federal relief dollars that are coming into the state of Michigan. A lot of those dollars are being allocated directly into the education system or to the education system through county programs. But that money only lasts so long. Those federal dollars are not going to be constant. They do expire after a number of years. So what discussions are being had or need to be had at the state level going forward to support whatever programs may be aided by that, or whatever additional aid to school districts, particularly school districts in higher poverty areas, to provide them the support that they will need in the future beyond the next few years, beyond the COVID-19 pandemic, because eventually this money is going to run out. And when it does run out, you can't necessarily just pull the carpet out from under these new programs that could severely impact a lot of these districts.
Okay, a couple years ago, the Oakland County School Finance Research Collaborative did a statewide analysis on funding, and we found that Michigan was dead last in education funding, which was a bit of a surprise to me because I came from Pontiac School District, which was one of the school districts that were struggling, and I'm pleased to say Pontiac School District is not struggling now. But because of the current efforts done under the Whitmer administration, we passed legislation that made Michigan have its largest a pot of money going into the education system. And yes, I agree that this funding will eventually run out. The CARES Act money, the ARP money, the COVID money, all of this money from the feds will eventually run out. But if we adopt some of the recommendations of the School Finance Research Collaborative, we will find out we'll be able to address these disparities, not only in urban areas, but in areas like Ishpeming and Nagani, where there's high poverty. And that seems to be the common denominator that's affecting our educators and our school districts and ISDs. We would be able to address some of these disparities and make it a long-term fix. We shouldn't have to just take a pocket of money to educate our young people. We should invest in educating our children. And we do that by providing them and the teachers the resources they need in order to have our students have quality education.
We're joined by Representative Brenda Carter. She represents the state of Michigan's 29th district with us today on the MegaCast. And Representative Carter, continuing on with that, it's important to get the necessary funding for all school districts across the state of Michigan and to bolster our funding for education to support the next generation, to support our teachers who have remained in place over the course of this really challenging year and a half plus that we've been in this pandemic. But it's also important to level the playing field. And I think that's become more evident than ever throughout the pandemic, where particularly in switching from a traditional format to being in person or being in a hybrid situation, school districts that are in higher poverty areas were significantly disadvantaged in comparison to their more affluent counterparts. What is being discussed or what is being done or has been done at the state level to help address that and kind of level the playing field? Because on one hand, this funding that goes toward these school districts, it needs to be greater on a broad scale, but even more so for these school districts that are in higher poverty areas so that they can modernize their education systems and provide the resources to their students to make sure that they're getting the best education possible that's not disadvantaged simply because of where they live and their family's socioeconomic status.
Well, that's a great question, Tyler. And one of the reasons I ran for the House of Representatives is I visited two little cities in the Upper Peninsula. One would think that majority minority districts would be the ones that are critically affected by the lack of broadband access, okay? But when I went to Ishpeming and Nagani, I saw some critical factors that needed to be addressed, like broadband internet access. That's the biggie in the upper lower peninsula and the upper peninsula, where they have difficulty with connectivity. So this is already in discussion in the House of Representatives, as well as leveling the playing field and making sure that our school systems up in the upper peninsula and the upper lower peninsula have the resources once again, because it's huge areas that the students have to travel. That's another area we were looking at, transportation, and making sure transportation is more equitable in the Upper Peninsula and the Upper Lower Peninsula, as well as mid-Michigan. So these are areas that we're looking at across the state to see how we can, as you state, level the playing field of affluence, because poverty, once again, is the key issue. So when we mitigate poverty, or at least try to do it whatever we can to mitigate it, we actually provide better resources, not only for our education system, but for our Michiganders as a whole.
We're joined by Representative Brenda Carter. She represents the state of Michigan's 29th district with us on the MegaCast. And Representative Carter, just a few more minutes with you today, so I want to give you an opportunity to speak on other issues that may be important to your constituents or to your office that your office is working on right now, or programs that may be in place for local residents within your district that they can take advantage of.
Okay, I appreciate that opportunity, because there's several things that I'm focusing on right now. We continue to get UIA or unemployment cases in. With the unemployment expiring, people still need to feed their families. They still need to take care of their children. And there is a huge disparity, and even in our business community right now, because we're finding it hard to attract and retain workers. So these are some of the issues that I'm working on in all 5 of my communities to address not only the expiration of the eviction moratorium, but things that are directly affected as a result of the pandemic. So unemployment, the evictions moratorium, and then what I would call the 800-pound gorilla in the room, auto no fault. So once again, I don't know if you have enough time for me to go into auto no fault, but the whole point of the matter is these are some of the key issues that I'm finding in my community, in my district, House District 29, that's affecting my residents across the district.
You can give us a little more details on the no fault if you'd like.
Okay, well, auto no fault, and that's not a laughing matter, because it's a very serious issue. In 2020, the House of Representatives Senate passed, it passed into law, PA 21 and PA 22, which changed the auto no fault law. Whereas now you have a graduated schedule of what you can, a graduated fee schedule of the amount of auto no faults you can purchase. What we did not see when we passed this law was some of the unintended consequences that are directly affecting our provider network. So we're working with, we're working across the aisle once again, trying to put a fix in place that will fix this oversight. And I do personally believe it was an oversight. I do not believe it was intended, but what we do have to do is put something in place that will fix this. Right now, our provider network is being hit pretty hard by this law as it stands, and we're working with Republicans on the other side of the aisle as well as Democrats. We have a policy council that's dealing with this, trying to work a fix out that would be beneficial to all Michiganders.
We're joined by Representative Brenda Carter. She is from Michigan's 29th district with us on the MegaCast. Representative Carter, just another minute or so before we'll say goodbye today. Anything else for our audience that would be important for them to know here in your district right now?
Well, I really appreciate the collaborative work that's happening in my district. You know, I was recently invited to an event in Orchard Lake Village put on by the West Bloomfield Historical Society that was just totally awesome, opening up their historical museum. And Auburn Hills, I have to switch way over there because a lot of times Auburn Hills is not mentioned, but Auburn Hills had a great breakfast for their CPAs and their business community, where we were able to address some of the political issues and legislative issues that affect the business industry. So as a whole, I'm very pleased to be the representative of House District 29, and I welcome anybody that want to contact me. I hope you have my contact information in the chat somewhere. If not, I can give it here, Tyler.
Yeah, we do have your information, and we'll be able to provide that if it is requested. We can put that in the descriptions as well. Representative Carter, we appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us today.
Once again, Tyler, thank you so very much for having me.